Hi, my name is Curtis Schofield. Right now I work at Linden Lab. I do work on a production Elixir system. Also, feel free to shout out in the middle of the talk. That doesn't bother me. But don't, please, if you could, please avoid telling anyone they're wrong. Just, if you need to say I disagree, that's fine. You can talk after. But let's not bring that kind of conversation into the room. And so let's try to keep it open. And know yourself is like the beginning of my talk. So I'm going to approach this from like most things. I'm very technical, but I start at a higher level and I work with like bigger pictures. So that's like the main problem, I think, is like a software person. Knowing yourself and knowing your context, time, place, and location. Like you really have to like understand this as a precursor to doing anything, to functioning almost at all. So there's two contexts which I'm like kind of familiar with. It's like, are you, like ask yourself this question, am I in, or what my context is? Am I a startup building value? Is that like what I'm here for? Is it for value, to build value, some kind of value? Or am I an engineer on a team that's building a system? And the system is like gonna inherently have some other value, like it needs to have certain qualities, it needs to function in a specific way, and that's the value, is like being able to create that. These are two different ways to operate, and so you need to know like yourself and where you are at to start there. So, well, I've been in Rails for 15 years, so that's like basically from the moment that it became public, I was using it, and I was using Ruby before that. So, like, what is it good for if you're still using it? This was basically the process I went through. I build test, build test, build test, build measure test, and then build, validate, pivot test, blah, 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 blah. So it's like, if you find yourself in this situation where you're like, I don't know what I don't know, and we're a company that doesn't know what we don't know, and we're trying to like go through build, measure, test, or build, validate, pivot test, something like Rails, and there's other things like it, is really, really, really helpful, because it's all about like making the common aspects not your problem, making the unique aspects your problem. So it's like, that's like a product-oriented thing. So when I was doing this 15 years of Rails, like I was never testing the test harness. I was never building a test harness. Like I built them, but I never built one in a Rails system. I didn't do an HTTP parser, I didn't do a database layer, I didn't do a mailer, I didn't do view layer, I didn't do request response handling, like rack. I didn't do job scheduling, I didn't do authentication or session, and like I've done all that stuff, but in the Rails world, I never did it at all. I just like plugged in the most appropriate thing. 75% of the time I used the same code on like same libraries on different projects. And I was always concentrated on like what's unique about this product, and who gives a shit about this tool other than like, is it serving me? And it was, I was mostly building and testing over and over again. All the concepts of the products were completely different, but the foundation was like really, really similar. So, that's what 15 years of really good Rails like did for me, and I appreciate it. But like this is something that happened in 2007, and I was at a company, and I was like, I want to work for you. You're doing Ruby programming, and I was up in Canada, and it was the only place doing Ruby programming, and I was doing C++ and Java, and I was like, oh, Ruby, I'm going with you guys. And then it kind of got weird, because I was like, so are we going to use Rails? Because there's Ruby and it's Rails, and like we're doing web, and they're like, no, we're building our own framework, because Rails is just like not, like it had a security flaw. Like last week, and I'm like, yeah, but okay, so who fixed it? Like it wasn't me, it was like it got fixed, And then, oh no, it's totally not right for us. We have a custom PHP framework, everything like has to scale, it has to be a certain way, and it's like, but on a fundamental level, there was really nothing like, they didn't like me looking at what they'd done and saying like, on a fundamental level, this is basically just like a web system, and I just came from like web systems research, and so, it's the web system Rails. We'll make our own 4 months. Well, it never happened. It didn't happen in 4 months, it didn't happen in 6 months, it didn't happen in 8 months, and then somewhere around like a year, what was released was a hybrid between like PHP and Ruby and this new framework, and yeah, you know, you can imagine like what working on that would have been like. And everyone was sad too, because they, you know, they thought they were going to make this great new framework, and then they didn't. So it's like, you know, if your problem is building a framework, that's like a nice problem to have. But if your problem is like taking a system that's like been written in another language, it's kind of legacy, and then like moving it over to like a better, more stable language, you really, really have to question like yourself if you're like, I'm going to rewrite the whole thing, you know, and use like nothing that's off the shelf. It's like, why? Okay, so these were my major problems with Rails when I was like, and I didn't honestly care about this at all until like after about 10 years. I was just like, whatever, because like I said, I was focused on the product, I was doing all the things, it solved my problems for me, and it was teaching me constantly. Like, I was growing, like the whole time I was growing, I was like, oh, these are the other things that I don't know, but okay, I learned that. These are the things behind the scenes that are doing magic stuff for me that I don't know about, okay, I learned that too. You know, over and over and over again, going to that. And it took a really long time for me to get to be like, I feel like I'm trapped in a box. Like, instead of being like, yay, everything's consistent and there's a convention for everything, and which was rewarding. If I could go into any job site, basically, sit down with someone who also worked on a Rails system, and like within 15 minutes, I could be like working with them. Like, that was really fun, because it's like we all know the conventions, we know how to name things, like everything's agreed upon, and we can get work done, and that was really great. And it really took a long time for that to be even remotely a problem for me. And it really took like sort of seeing like, oh, okay, well, as soon as you start going off the rails, it stops working. So it's like, stay on the rails. But then you just end up in these situations and you're like, whoa, this is not on the rails. Okay, so then the other thing was like, okay, low compute efficiency, who gives a crap? Like, I don't know. Like, that fellow knows something about SD cards that I don't know, or SD drives that I don't know, and I'm sure it's super valuable and I'd love to know it, but from the high-level product, and this is only one view, a high-level product view, it's like, that doesn't matter. Now, as an engineer and a technical person who has to like maintain the systems, and I see the bill, and I also like care about the environment, I'm just like, whoa, okay. But you know, it took a while for that to even become an issue in my mind. It was more like, okay, kill the feature, write the feature, kill the feature, write the feature, delete code, add code, like make sure the tests are stable, like just make sure that all this churn that's like going through, when we finally figure out what the hell this thing is supposed to do, it does it, or like it's running and it's got load and it's got scale, and like we you know, we got a cluster and everything's working, so like why mess with it, because the business is building value, you know? But those weren't really problems. So the other thing I wanted to mention is like 2004, DHH, like I was on IRC and DHH was there, and I was like, so like blah 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 plugin for authentication, and no plugins, like, and I was just like, what? And it was like some random person just like starts texting me and is like, hey, yeah, okay, so this is like a contested topic. Like people every like week, someone comes in and asks like for some plugin for something like this. So you're just like the next person that's done that. And so basically this background story is DHH is like really trying to focus on the model view controller and the essential like stack, and he doesn't want any of this extra stuff like in the core. So like back then there was like this vision of like what a web stack could be like, and ideally would be like. And at the time, like the competitor was PHP, which was just like a bunch of crap on the page, like literally a page of code, and also the web page. Like there was no distinguishing like the crap. It was just like most people didn't use classes back then. You know, even though PHP 4.3 or whatever like supported it. And then the other option was Java server page, which was coincidentally, it was like also just a whole bunch of crap on the page. And then this like even worse Java code that was just like mind-numbing. And so, I mean, when my friend was like, hey, look at Rails, I was just like, it does it all, and it does it really concisely, and it was like really valuable. So that, I mean, then like Rails went through like a lot, you know? So I thought about it and I was like, okay, well, when did, like, for me, when did Rails start breaking down? Like, what about Rails, like, started to break down? And I realized it was, I wanted to say, like, responsive web design, because, I mean, it sort of did, but responsive web design doesn't have anything to do with, like, it has everything to do with that, the iPhone. The iPhone basically started to, in my mind, like, started to take down Rails. And it was just this idea that now, we don't have like one device that we're like managing. We have 5 browsers that we're managing or whatever on a desktop. Now we have another device, another browser. And there's gonna be another device and another device and another device, and there's gonna be more browsers. And at that point, and the other thing that started to change was like JavaScript, how JavaScript was being used to demonstrate like user interfaces. That started to change around like 2008, 2009. In a really significant way. And Rails like tried to solve the problem in a little way. Like they're like, oh, we'll put our foot in the water and we'll make like JavaScript that gets generated from Ruby code. And then they were like, whoa, that totally didn't work. Maybe we shouldn't be involved in this JavaScript stuff. And they like ripped it out, you know, a couple versions later. But the problem was that the technology on the JavaScript side was changing so rapidly. And it didn't have a solution, you know? So like in a language where, in a framework where convention and understanding and everything's based on like a set expectation and like, this is MVC and it's the world was changing and Rails was like, it was just like, it had just grown in a really significant way and it couldn't necessarily address it completely, which it had addressed other things so completely before, so there was kind of the expectation that whatever it did, it would be right or good enough. And in a way, it is. Like, because there's so many different ways to do this JavaScript client UI right now, like we're experiencing like, there's like every different company has a different way to do it. You know, so now this is like cut off over to the other side of my talk, which is like, okay, well, Elixir and Phoenix. Okay, so this is what it says on Phoenix's website. Productive, reliable, fast.
You said if we can pipe in before you go on with this. So Rails has gotten a lot better in that respect, and you can use it as a backend for a single page web app, and you can serve up your Angular and stuff through the asset pipeline. And now with Rails 5, you have the streaming and the sockets and all that. So it has adapted to the modern world, but I
totally has. It totally has. Like that's a really good point, and that's what I mean by like they came up with a way like to work that will work. So like it does work, and you can keep using it. So like I still think everything good about Rails from that first slide or whatever. Like if you are trying to solve product problems, like why not like take out the problem of like building all these things. But on the other hand, now this is like the systems engineer in me talking, you know, so this is like, the guy over there like really likes the product and really likes the design and all that stuff and wants customer value. That's nice. I don't care. I want to go to sleep and then wake up in the morning and not have been called. Right? And then I want to go away on vacation, and when I come back from vacation, I want to hear the story. Oh yeah, the server burnt down. It didn't matter because there was a bunch of other running, and it just handles so much load so easily that like one gone, we would have had to lose like, yeah, it wouldn't have been a problem. And that's the reality that I experienced. Like literally, I went away on vacation, and I'm like, oh, server's down, whatever. It's okay. Like, it's gonna be okay. I know it's gonna be okay because I built it and I know what kind of load it can handle. And I know what kind of load a rail system can handle. And I would need 10 of those machines to handle the rail system. And if one of them went down, it probably wouldn't have mattered. But if 3 of them went down out of my 10, then all of a sudden I'd be kind of worried, even though I have 7 more. But Elixir, I'm running this Elixir system and I have 3, and one goes down, I'm like, whatever. And it's totally not a problem. Like, that thing is, because I watched it not crash. I wrote Rails processes, I wrote Ruby processes to kill Rails processes to keep the system stable. Like, it was a really good solution. It was like, oh, they used too much memory, killed them. So this is what this is my perspective, this is what I learned. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, is this Rails? No, it's not Rails at all. This is just a common ground, like kind of back to the original like DHH concept of like model view controller or whatever, but even less so, this is just a common ground for you to start for people that understand like web systems and Rails or Sinatra or whatever, that understand one of those layers. This is a common ground for you to start, and it's sort of just, it's just like at the groundwork. It's a ground level, and it's a frame. More than it's like a framework, it's the ground layer of like whatever you're building, you know. So it's a little bit different. That's how I see it. Like this is kind of how I look at it. I'm like, it has a view layer, and I put a little star, you know, because its view layer, it's just like whatever. It's like 1990. Like it's like whatever, I don't care. It's 1990. That's your view layer. Make some HTML, CSS. Spit it out, that's it. Like that's kind of where it's at. It's not like, you know, oh, the year is 2015, 2016, and it needs to support Angular and Ember and blah, yada, yada. It's just like, here's some HTML. And it has a router, it was great, I need that. And then this is what I really liked. I was like, okay, Phoenix, great, this is really fun, I can do my web pages. But now I'm running on Elixir. Now I have Elixir, now I have OTP, now I have Erlang, I have all that shit, and it's just hidden underneath there, and I just have to like, you know, kick a button, and then like I'm going with it. So that's what I really like about it. So the thing about OTP is like, what I'm saying when I say OTP, I'm like supervisors, you know, managed processes, this whole idea of like a process hierarchy, the idea that I can connect to a shell on a remote system, spawn like a visual interface observer, and then I'm like looking at what everything's doing. I'm like, okay, this is, and that's Erlang, right? It's Erlang doing Erlang underneath Elixir, and I'm like, this is what I really like about it. It's like someone has a caching problem, and this is what I see. I see 450 milliseconds request times, just like regularly, and I'm doing socket connections, multiple socket connections behind the scenes in another process to get all the data to do that 400 millisecond thing. In Rails, that would take at least 2 seconds, like hands down, like because I've done it and I've seen it, put together a page, and I was always like 3 seconds is the minimum, you know, for a user page, because they look 3 seconds, I'm like whatever, who cares? But now I'm looking at this and it's like half a second, and I'm like, this is great. Holy shit, it's fast. And like the caching system, I'm like, I'm programming, I'm the only guy running this like Elixir system right now, and I'm programming and programming. I'm like, okay, here's the part where I install Redis or whatever. Here's the part where I install, I just throw some piece of infrastructure up because I just needed to do this one extra thing, and I needed to have this stupid fucking thing in memory, pardon my language, and that was like blocking me from doing the next step. And it's like, I don't, like, I'm really good in the Unix, but I don't want to go and like set up all my chef scripts to like install Redis and then like re-update 3 environments just so I can like write one more line of code. Well, in Elixir, I don't have to. I can be like, okay, I'm gonna have an agent, it's a cache process, it's this little cache server, blah, 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 blah. It runs like on every little node, they have like a little background cache. And I solved that stupid problem in a really naive way, but it allows me to keep writing the rest of the code. And then I have a place to develop an interface. And then the interface could turn into, I don't know, 10 machines. I don't care. You know, it's like about developing the interface and about developing the structure, as opposed to just like, oh, I have to, you know, install a Unix tool or whatever. So I really, really like that. So so I don't think any 2 companies are doing views like at all the same. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, I think if you took 2 Angular companies and put them together and like asked, how do you do Angular? I can't imagine them saying anything like remotely close to each other. Even different versions, they'd be like, oh no, we stayed back from like the 2, and oh no, we jumped on the 2, and blah, blah, blah. And then Ember, I imagine, is like even worse, because it's like persistence framework. Did it hit? Time, okay. So, why did I switch? Boredom. I was completely bored. That's the #1 reason I switched. I'm sorry, it was 15 years. What do you expect from me? I was tired of writing Unix wrapper scripts for Ruby. I wanted to write Unix wrapper scripts for other things. I wasn't tired of like the whole Redis thing. I got tired of like installing some Unix tool infrastructure when I knew like just a little bit of code would solve my problem for this time zone. And I wanted something that was elegant, expressive, pragmatic, robust, and performant tools are sexy for me. So, but what I love about Rails, I still love this. It's large, cohesive, empathetic. I really like that. Hardworking, product design, and focused community. So it's like all these really positive, great things still. And I just see Elixir as an opportunity to kind of like push the good stuff, like all of our experience, into like this new frontier, really. Yeah. Woo. Is there any other questions?
So let's do one question. Anyone?
What percentage of your time would you say you spend doing Phoenix stuff versus like getting into like Elixir specific kind of code?
I feel like mostly I'm programming Elixir. Like very little of my time is, because Phoenix is really just this ground. Like aside from like the controller, like and the view shared module weirdness that took me a while to understand, and it's only weird if you don't understand it. And other than that, I'm just writing Elixir code. Like I kind of like that feeling. I'm like, this is, there's no magic. All the magic's been stripped away. That no one's had time to put the magic in. So just like there's just simple things that work. So it's mostly, when I have a problem, I'm mostly just writing like small bits of Elixir. Yeah.
Okay, last question.
Was this your first experience with functional programming and actor platform programming?
No, I like had a boost or whatever you want, easy way, because I did Prolog and I did Lisps and stuff in university. And then I also did evented programming, and I also did a lot of threading with Java and C++ before. And I did a lot of Node too. So yeah, I had like a little bit of a boost, but it's still really new to me, Yeah.
Thank you.